All right, Rudy, let's talk about landscape winter management. What do we need to be doing as winter approaches?
Well, as winter approaches, I think what most folks tend to forget is that this is the perfect time to try and get back out in the yard.
Huh.
During the summertime, as Carol was saying, you want to get inside, you don't want to be outside. I'm the kind of person that doesn't want to work outside as well when it's really hot.
Right.
But you tend to forget that, during the wintertime, that's a time where you can actually start to prepare for your spring. So getting your lawn ready for the winter times, you can actually do your final cuts for your cool season grass. You can do your final cuts and make sure that you keep them at least 2 inches in depth minimum for your cool season. Your warm season, you might want to cut them down a little bit shorter if you want. They'll start to turn brown as well, such as your Bermudas and so forth. Now, when they start to go dormant, there isn't really a reason for you to go ahead and try and fertilize.
Right.
I think that's kind of a wasted effort because nothing's going to be happening during the wintertime for dormant lawns, but you can do some type of fortification for some of your cool season grasses. Then also your irrigation system. If you have an irrigation system in your lawn area, you can also get those prepared. Make sure you blow out and drain those lines so they don't bust during the wintertime. And then also getting your shrubs ready and your beds ready. Shrubs, you can go ahead after your last frost, go ahead and start pruning and getting those cut back. Any of your ornamental grasses, you can go ahead and let those grow. I would not prune those back until the springtime because what you end up happening with your ornamental grasses, I'm a real big fan of ornamental grasses because it adds that texture and color and also sound during the wintertime. Which is just wonderful because during the wintertime, usually it's pretty drab, you don't have much color, but you can still add texture. And then so during the actual spring, early spring, you would cut those back to about 12 inches to 6 inches, depending upon the type of ornamental grasses.
By the way, a friend gave me a tip on that too. He puts a bungee cord around it before he cuts.
Cut it.
Yes, I think when I first started out doing that in landscapes, the biggest thing was, what are you going to use? Are you going to use a weed eater? Do you use shears?
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of trying to control all that huge bunch. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Tying it up first is the best way to do it, and then cutting through it so you don't have to drag all this mess out everywhere.
Right,
So
that's pretty good. And you actually did mention something that I hear Miss Kara mention all the time.
Yeah.
Sound in the garden. Did you hear her mention that?
I do.
Because
Yes.
you say that all the time.
I love things that move.
the sound in the garden, I think that's one thing that people tend to forget is they think about color and they think about texture.
Yeah.
But the sound is something that most people are not really familiar with or don't really think about.
Right.
And it provides some shelter. I often see birds going into the inside of big grass cutters.
Yes, that's true, and also some rodents as well. But we try and steer away from those.
Right.
But also, you can also take your leaves. Any of those cuttings, you can then recycle and put that into your compost pile. Again, if they are diseased, make sure those particular items you don't put in your compost because you don't want to continue the cycle for disease because they can overwinter in your compost. So anything that is actually diseased or has kind of a pest on them, you will destroy those or put them in the trash. But anything that is of good, sound nature, you can put into your compost pile. And then also don't forget about your not your rodents, but your birds.
Yeah, wildlife.
Wildlife as well. To if you do have a bird bath, to try and drain that out, or if you are going to provide some kind of liquid or water for them during the winter months, try and maybe have a heater. And then also some good sources of seed or food during the wintertime as well.
Rudy, I want to mention too that the shrubs is, remember, those people might forget that the spring flowering shrubs need to be left alone.
Yeah, you have to make sure that once they flower, that's the best time to actually then prune. So make sure you wait till they actually flower, then actually do the pruning. So a lot of times we tell folks to make sure that after they flower, and then once the leaves come down, especially for the deciduous, like your crepe myrtles and so forth, you can do your pruning then.
Right. Okay. Now, what about so your insect pests? What about applying oils?
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, this is the best time as well. During the dormant period, this is the best time to do any of your dormant oils to address any kind of scale or thrips or so forth. And so this is the best time to do that. Make sure, depending upon what type of dormant oil you're going to be utilizing, to look at the instruction. Because there are some requirements as to the actual temperature requirements, because if it gets too cold to actually apply your dormant oil, it may not be just as effective. So that's one thing you have to take into account.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's go back to the cool season grasses for a second.
Yes.
Our fescue. What do we need to fertilize the fescue with?
Well, nitrogen, again, is not something that you're going to be utilizing during the dormant periods, but your actual phosphorus and maybe your potassium as well. It's some of those fertilizers that are a little bit stronger in those particular aspects and higher in concentration, less in the nitrogen, is something that you're going to be utilizing during the cool season months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And here we always talk about the soil test.
Yes.
You know, this is a good time to do that. Would you agree with that?
Yes, that's the best time, because during the course of, let's say, 2 or 3 years during your actual cycle of your lawn, things can change. And so it's best to monitor that. And if you haven't done a soil test, make sure you get one before you do any application of fertilizers to make sure you're doing the right thing, and there it's going to be effective. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be very effective.
And can we mention like a little bit about, I hate to see any shrub shorn, no matter what time of year. And I'm a big fan of cutting back at the joint, even to reduce the size. If it's gotten too big, even if it's a great big old forsythia, you can follow those bigger limbs way back into the shrub and nip them off so that you don't see where you had the cut.
Right. I think one thing, I think the easiest way for most folks is that they'll just go around and shear things.
Yes.
And
that's your meatball that you always talk about.
Yeah, the meatballs, the
meatball.
cans, or the rectangles, and
Rectangles.
that's I'm not a big fan of those. I think one of the biggest things that you have when you're doing your pruning, to take the time and effort to really think out the process.
Okay.
And so a lot of times when you're doing your pruning, either there's going to be some topping, or some tips, or actually thinning out from the middle. And that's really what the kind of pruning that you should be working with, not something that's going to just wipe things off and then shape things, because that's going to actually not help the plant and destroy the actual features of the plant.
Sure.
It's art and science. I always tell people step back and study.
Right.
And if it's things like, say, Japanese maples touching the house or over the sidewalk, if you'll reduce those, take those limbs off that are the offensive limbs that are touching the house or over the sidewalk, back where they came from the trunk or the larger limb, you retain the grace. And eventually you get it up and over, instead of, if you whack it off, you'll get that little witch's broom of regrowth. That's ugly.
And that's typical what you see with a lot of crepe murder.
Yes, the murder.
Right, the crepe murder, where they'll just cut it off to a stump or to a main limb, and then you end up with this ball of like a witch's broom, and so that really destroys the whole structure of the plant.
This looks so bad. And Jason always says, "Stop the chop."
Stop the
Stop
chop.
the chop.
Stop the chop.
Now, I had purchased some that had crepe myrtle bark scale, and I just decided to start them over.
Okay.
Wow.
I cut them off and retrained to 5 to 7 stems as we were taught in school.
Okay.
If you want a multi-stem crepe myrtle.
Yeah.
And so I just went ahead and began them over made it easier to get rid of the problem.
All right.
And maybe out where I am, I won't have to treat.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One last thing I would like to cover, though, going back to the leaves, can we get folks to stop bagging the leaves up and leaving them on the curb?
Yeah.
Oh,
In the
yes,
plastic
definitely
bags?
so. I mean, this is the best time. Also, you can use your lawnmower and then just go ahead and chop everything up and then reincorporate it into the actual soil.
Right.
Same thing for not bagging your actual lawnmower. When you're doing the grass cuttings, don't bag. Just go ahead and mulch.
Or pile it up somewhere. I love how, I keep talking about Felder today, but how simple. Some people make composting very difficult, and they have all these rules and proportions.
Exactly.
And Felder says it's real simple. Don't throw it away, pile it up somewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's a very simple concept. I think, you don't really need those containers. You don't need all these different ratios. Just allow it to just decompose, and then you're good.
All right. Great discussion. That's good stuff. Thank you much, Rudy. Appreciate that. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. To find out more information on this topic, just click on the familyplotgarden.com link in the description.